Good evening. Today is Monday, May 3rd, 2021. Welcome to the Finance Committee meeting, and we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. Can I get a roll call?
Finance Committee Chair Cullen.
Present.
Madam Board President Galbraith.
Present.
Vice President Morgan.
Present.
Board Member Coleman.
Present.
Board Secretary Scott.
All right. And then we'll go ahead and move on over to prioritize agenda. Was there any changes or any questions on the agenda? No? Do I have a...
Board Member Jeff Morgan. We keep running into one another.
I know. I had to. You make the motion.
Board Member Jeff Morgan, I make a motion to approve the prioritized agenda.
Okay, we have a motion. Do I have a second?
Board Member Coleman, I second.
Okay, we have a second with Wynn Coleman. Can we get a roll call?
Jeffrey Morgan.
Yes.
Amanda Galbraith.
Yes.
Catherine Cullen.
Yes.
Wynn Coleman.
Yes.
Noreen Scott.
Okay, all right.
I don't know if she's having problems, but I had real problems getting back in. So see if she can come back in. But I had a very difficult time.
So she did just text me that she's waiting to be let in. I don't know if Lori can let her in. Sorry, and then I'll be quiet.
Okay.
Go ahead, Catherine. Sorry.
All right, we'll go ahead and move on over to the reports for a budget update. Mike Baker.
Can you let her in? You don't see it? Good evening, Madam Chair, Dr. Cleveland, members of the Finance Committee. So this evening, I will first give a short budget update. But this evening, what we will be reviewing is the first item on the agenda will be the 910B5. Arlene will go over that particular form. And what that is referring to is our revenue and how the revenue is allocated by PED. And so Arlene will give you a detailed analysis of what we can expect this year. And just for your information, we did receive our 910B5 literally today at about 3 p.m. So you do have, Tracy did put that form in your folder. So you do have the up-to-date form. Next, we have Mike and Marissa will present staff allocations. And staff allocations is a very complex and difficult process where student populations are projected by each class to include special ed. And from those projections, staff is then allocated to each school. And Mike and Marissa will go into detail and to demonstrate how those numbers are generated. And what's important to note is that approximately 90% of our overall budget is specifically salary and benefits. From there, we'll move on to the CARES budget. We'll just have probably a fairly short conversation about the CARES budget. It's fairly short and straightforward. And then we will just a number of items about department budgets, and then we will stand for overall questions in regard to the budget. But looking at the budget for the 2021-22 fiscal year, we are anticipating flat revenue. So essentially, our revenue numbers are really not much higher than they were last year. The budget challenge we have this year, however, we have a number of mandatory budgetary increases where the state legislature passed a number of laws that makes it mandated for us to increase some of our expenditures. The first one has to do with salary increases. of 1.5% to all employees. That amounts to an expenditure of about $1.8 million. The legislature also increased the district's ERB contribution of 1%. That increases our expenses by approximately $1 million. And our medical premiums increased at the district level, and it also increased at the employee level, and that cost is approximately $575,000. Those mandatory adjustments come to $3.375 million. In addition to those mandatory items, we also have new programs which, for the most part, essentially were mandated. The first one is the Student Support Center, some project that we've been working on for quite some time. We're looking at approximately $241,000 in addition to our budget. We have the virtual elementary school that we will be opening. Total cost on that is approximately $1.5 million. The expansion to the cyber academy is approximately $570,000. And then finally, we have a slight increase to the fine arts program at $181,000. Those items that I just mentioned equal approximately $5.8 million. And the challenge is we have our expenses have increased $5.8 million. However, our revenue did not increase. So in order to balance the budget, we did have to look for departments, and the departments were trimmed in order to compensate for the additional expenses. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Arlene, and she will give you the detailed analysis of our SEG.
Good evening, everyone. I need to pull up my presentation.
Yeah.
I will say this is a lot better than what I saw the other day in this system. So I was happy to see the change.
Definitely, we were waiting for
I
that.
was a little worried.
Okay, I can't.
Okay, go. You are presenting.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to pull up the 975. So it's there. Stop presenting. Let me start over. But I still was able to pull this up.
Okay, now go back to
Okay.
present now. A tab, I think, is where you are. Okay, go. Nope. Now go back and do it. Yeah.
Do I need to put that in another window?
I don't know. Throwing me now. Figure we can't get it to share.
Oh, there it was.
Oh.
No.
Set it right there. Ooh, yeah, but
This one, share.
you did good. I don't know what you did.
Now can you all see? Now how do I see?
I can never see when I'm on this. I always just have to stay on that one.
Is that the right one?
Mm-hmm. Sure, you're
Yeah,
just make
I
it,
guess
yeah,
I'm gonna
just do
have
that.
to just
And that's
do
what I
it
always have to
large.
do. I never can see
I
anybody.
can't see anybody.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry for those technical difficulties. Good evening. Well, it's going to cut
It'll
off.
cut it off.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Cleveland. Again, my name is Arlene Manzanares. I'm the Executive Director of Finance, and I will be going over the 910B5. As Mr. Baker indicated, we did receive the revised 910B5 this afternoon at 3 o'clock, and we are very happy with the revisions. So as we go through this document, I will be explaining the different state statute that each section applies to. I will not be reading the complete state statute, but if at any time you all would like the description of that, I can do that for you. So first of all, we'll start with the membership average. Oh, I'm sorry, let me back up a minute. So the 910B5 form is PED's tool to calculate the state equalization guarantee, which is also known as SEG. That's what we refer to. So first of all, we'll start with the membership average, which is taken from the state statute 22-8-25, which is state equalization guaranteed distribution, definitions, and determination of amount. Now, 22-8-25D states to determine the amount of the state equalization guaranteed distribution, the department shall calculate the number of program units to which each school district or charter school is entitled using an average of the membership, which I will refer to as MEM, on the second and third reporting dates of the prior year. The second and third reporting period are also referred to as the 80 and 120-day reporting period. This data is reported through the STAR system and certified by the superintendent. So here on the screen, you will see the actual 910B5, but I want to take you back to another tab where it identifies the 80 and 120-day. So once we have the certified 80 and 120-day, those amounts are entered into this calculation sheet. This in front of you is the 80-day, and up here to the right side are the 120-day totals. This data is entered into this tab, which then is automatically transferred into the 910B5 as an average membership. So for instance, the early childhood education, which is in this line 9, the total for the 80-day is 247. And the 120-day, let me scoot over here to the right, is 277. Therefore, leaving a total of 524 divided by 2 is 262. So as I transfer over to the 910B5 right here, you will see the 262. Can everyone see that okay? Are they saying?
Yes. Yeah, we
Yes,
did.
sorry. I forgot you
Yeah.
can't see us earlier.
I can't see you guys, I'm sorry. Okay, the same calculation method is used for grade 1 through 12. The grade total is then multiplied by the cost index to get the program unit. State Statute 22-8-19 supports the pre-K and kindergarten unit calculation. 22-8-20 supports the basic program units for grades 1 through 12. So as you can see here, kindergarten program units are up above, and grade 1 through 12 is under the basic programs. The grade total multiplied by the cost index gives you your total program units. As you move down, this calculation gives us the total membership and the total membership program units. So kindergarten units are 1,711.44, and basic program units come out to 17,812.68 for a total membership program unit of 19,524. Moving down, the next section is the staffing cost multiplier, and this is based on TCI and TNE, and both have weights that are in a phase-in process. The TCI is the teacher cost index and supported by State Statute 22-8-49. The TNE is the Training and Experience Index and supported by State Statute 22-8-24. The TNE and TCI weighted average is defined in State Statute 22-8-2, which states that in fiscal year 22, the weighted average of the TNE index would be 25%, which you see right up here in this blue highlighted area. And the TCI index will be 75%. So the TNE times the weight, so the TNE here in the lighter orange, 1.084 times the weight of 25% plus the TCI index of 1.087 times the weight for TCI, which is 75%, equals the staffing cost multiplier, also known as SCM. We multiply that by the total membership program units, and that's where we land up with our total units of 21,203.198. The next section of the 910B5 is special education. The number of special education units is the sum of the following: the membership, and it's multiplied by the cost differential factor. Each program class is defined in State Statute 22-8-21C, number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So as you can see here, when I say 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 in the state statute, CNC gifted is, I believe, 2, identified in state statute 2, D is 3 and 4 year, DD is 4. The A and B membership is under number 1, and the ancillary FTE is in number 5 of the state statute. So those numbers, the membership came again from the average of the 8120 multiplied by the factor on this side, on the right side of the screen, gives you your total units. So the total special education units is 7,137.40. The elementary fine arts program units are identified in State Statute 22-8-23.5. And again, the total membership is an average of the 8120, which is 8,133, multiplied off to the right here by the factor of 0.050 to total 406.65 units for fine arts. Bilingual, multicultural education program units, as are referred to in State Statute 22-8-22. And that is determined by multiplying the full-time equivalent membership by the cost differential factor of 0.50, which is here off to the side. Okay, we head on down to National Board Certified Teachers. That calculation is supported by State Statute 22-8-23.4. And so we currently have 32 FTE multiplied by a 1.50 factor gives us 48 units. The next two areas don't apply to Rio Rancho, so we'll jump down to the at-risk. The at-risk program units is identified in State Statute 22-8-23.3. The number of additional units to which a school district is entitled under this section is computed by the at-risk index times the total district membership, including early childhood education, full-time equivalent membership, and special education membership, and where the at-risk index is calculated by the 3-year average total rate by and multiplied by a 0.30 will give you your at-risk index. So this year, due to the decreased membership, which is right here, our membership is 16,216, and our at-risk index this year is 0.105. Last year, it was 0.111. Due to the decrease in our membership, that index decreased as well. So the total units for at-risk is 1,702.68. Then we move on to enrollment growth. This is the first year that I know of that we have projected enrollment growth due to our numbers. So this is identified in State Statute 22-8-23.1, which states that a school district with an increase in membership equal to or greater than 1% is eligible for additional program units. So for 2021, and this is these membership amounts are taken at the 40-day, it's not an average of the 80-120. This is the 40 days. So in 2021, you can see that the 40-day membership was 16,353.50. And we have projected that our 40-day for 21-22 will be 16,518. which gives us a growth units of 81.23. The next section is our charter school student activities. These program units are supported by State Statute 22-8-23.6, where we have a membership of 15.5 multiplied by 0.10 factor gives us 1.55 units. The homeschool student activities units is identified in State Statute 22-8-23.8. And homeschool student activities has 19.5 membership. The factor is the same, creating 1.95 units. The next item is the homeschool student program. And that one is supported by State Statute 22-8-23.9. We're reporting 4.5 students with attending 10.5 classes, and the factor is 0.25, creating 2.625 units. Then we can move down to our extended learning time. And this is one of the items that was not identified in the previous 910B5. And so what PED did was they put our actual extended learning time membership from last year into the new ELTP membership instead of us taking the average of the 8120. So that came out to 16,087 members, which is multiplied by a 0.110 factor, giving us 1,769.57 units. Which takes us to, oh, let me point out one more thing. House Bill 2. We used to have to, they would take 75% of our tax levy out right here in this area, and that was passed, so that is no longer accounted for in our 910B5. So as I move over, our SEG revenue for next year will be $154,866,740. With that, I am open for questions before I pass it on to the next.
And I don't have everybody on here. So, Arlene, can you mute? I'm sorry. We get feedback in that room.
All right.
Okay, so I can't see all the board members. I can only see Noreen, Jeff, and oh, here we go. So we'll start with Wynn. Do you have any questions?
I don't, but thank you for the explanation and referencing the statutes, and so thanks.
Noreen, Secretary Scott, I'm sorry. No questions. President Galbraith.
I am good. I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Okay, Vice President Morgan.
No questions.
So Arlene, I did have a question because what was uploaded earlier that I saw was at 146, and then now with the change today, what was the change from the 146 to this one? Why were they so far off?
It was all the extended learning time. Yeah. They had not captured anything for the extended learning time.
Right.
Okay. All right. And now I see that. Yeah, when I printed that out, because I was really concerned when I saw this. I said, oh my goodness, we're gonna have to do some serious cuts. But yeah, I see that now. Okay, perfect. I don't have any other questions. Dr. Cleveland, did you want to say anything?
No, I think it was a very comprehensive report. I just wanted to add one thing from earlier, in terms of the discussion about the budget and hold harmless, and I want to be sure people understand the difference in how people see and perceive that. traditionally, school districts perceive hold harmless is the same amount of money from the year before plus fixed costs. And what we got this year was the money we pretty much had the year before, but without necessarily all of the fixed costs. So that's what created some of the shortfall. And there, as I said, there's some significant increases that are coming related to state requirements and retirement and other things. One of the other things too, as we look at are other fixed costs, and we haven't spent much time on it, so I assume they're pretty flat this year, Arlene. And one is property liability insurance. And I know some districts have experienced very dramatic increases this year in that amount. But I don't think we've had hardly any claims. So the really hard work we do to keep those claims down in our district certainly helps us keep that amount constant. So that's all I wanted to add. Thanks.
And I was just going to say, yeah, we don't ever see with the increases that they make with us from the state, we don't really see it back in our budget or back from the state. So unfortunately, they have a lot of those unfunded mandates. Okay, so next will be Mike Chavez for the staff allocations.
I should turn my sound up. Good evening, President Galbraith, Dr. Cleveland, members of the board. I just have a couple of comments to make, and then I'm actually going to be turning this presentation over. But I want to kind of reiterate a couple of things that Mr. Baker said earlier. First of all, I want to point out, and this is good timing because we just saw that, our budget this year is about $154 million for operational. And as Mr. Baker mentioned earlier, close to 90% of that goes towards personnel for the district. And so each year, towards the end of the year, around December, we start doing a very deep analytical look at our personnel for the entire district. And we begin looking at every location in the district to see where our personnel are placed. We have a very, very tight system that we use called position control that we work very closely with the finance department on. And we know to the person exactly where every single person in this district is allocated. Each year, of course, things change slightly. This year is a little different. This year is very interesting, as you know. But each year, we begin looking at what the needs of each department and or school are going to be for the coming year. And those needs are based on that student population that Ms. Manzanares just talked about. So what we do is we begin looking at what the student population is projected to be for the coming year. And this takes a lot of coordination with a number of different departments. We work very closely in collaboration with the special education department, federal programs. We work very closely with the finance department. We work closely with the school improvement officers and with the chief operating officer. And we begin putting this together. What I can say is that we have been extremely fortunate the last couple of years to have someone with a very analytical mind who has been with our department for several years now, but has taken over working on these allocations, and that's Marisa de Aragon. And she is an HR director, and she is the one who goes in and sits and looks over these sheets over and over and over and tries to put these numbers together. And the thing I will tell you about a typical year and this year is that this year is very difficult because we really don't know what to expect. We're very much in the dark about what we're hoping. We are truly, truly hoping that we're going to see a trend of students returning. That is everyone's hope. As Arlene said earlier, the membership was about 16,300. That was the 120-day STARS report. We are basing our numbers a little bit higher than that, and Marisa will talk about that. We are truly hoping that we will see an upward trend over the summer of parents returning as things are improving across our state and across the nation. And but this is definitely a very unique year in terms of working on allocations, and it has been a little stressful. But Marisa has done a fabulous job, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to her now, and she's going to talk a little bit about her process and how she goes about putting these allocations together.
Okay, you're on mute. There we go.
Did it go away?
I think so, did it?
Do you want to just look at it on here?
Sure. Yeah. Good evening, President Galbraith, members of the board, Dr. Cleveland. I'm going to go over, there's a lot of information on this sheet, so we can spend as much time as we need to or as little time. But basically what this is our tracking process from year to year to track allocations, both in the current year and for the coming year. So what you see in that peach color, and if I need to increase it, I can. In that peach color is the current year that we're operating in. And so the far left column is what was the approved allocations for the 2021 school year. The second column is the allocations as they stood at 80-day. And the third column is the allocations at 120-day. Because once the allocations are approved, we may need to adjust allocations as the need becomes available at each site. So we track that from throughout the year. The projection used, that last peach column, is the projection, the enrollment projection that was used to create those allocations for the current year that we're operating in. The yellow columns are where we are today, actual allocations and staff. So the first numbers are the enrollment as they stood on March 29th. And like Mike mentioned, this is not a typical year. So what we would kind of look at that enrollment on that yellow column is kind of where we were at 40-day, 80-day, and look to see if there were a lot of shifts. But because we wanted to see how many students would come back on that April 5th date, I kind of did a comparison between 329 and 411. And they were fairly similar. And since these numbers had already been plugged into the sheet, that's what we went ahead and went with, was enrollment, actual enrollment on 329. That next column is the actual staff on 120-day. So we wanted to see if anyone was staffed below their allocations. And that's what that last column is that says difference, 120-day staff to 80-day allocation. So you're going to see some negative numbers in there. If a particular school site had an allocation, but they didn't staff for it or couldn't staff for it. And the column which we really are talking about now are the ones in the turquoise blue color. That is projected allocations and projected enrollment for the upcoming year, 21-22. And because we were kind of in a situation where we weren't sure what student enrollment is going to look like, and we still don't know what student enrollment is going to look like, we took what we had on 329 and added 3% to each school, a 3% enrollment increase at each grade level and at each special ed level. So what we do in the process is we roll all the numbers. So basically, you know, kinders went to first went to second, and so on. The only numbers we really don't have anything to base off of is kinder, because we don't have those until they start enrolling. So the kinder number is what we currently have on 329. Then you'll see numbers in there on, and I can't see the columns. Oh, it's a PDF. So where you see A and B, that is the enrollment for special ed A, special ed B, and then down below you'll see enrollment for special ed C and special ed D. Now, what it's hard because I'm not seeing it on here. So that column up on top that says 781 for Ernest Stapleton, that is the total enrollment between special ed and regular general ed students. The adjusted total, that next column over, takes into consideration the FTE that's required for special ed students. And there is a formula that is provided to us by PED that tells us, you know, for an A-level student, this is how much FTE that student would require, and so on for B, C, and D. And that's what those formulas, those percentages that you see, it says FTE 0.017, 0.029 for A and B, and then further down, can you see my cursor put in? Is for C is 0.067 and for D is 0.125. So this adjusted total column takes into consideration the amount of time that those students will have to be in a inclusion classroom or among general ed, and that's where you get the adjusted total. The average class size, the next column over, is for us to track that we're not going over those state requirements. So in that first turquoise column, that is the state requirement that for class load that we cannot go over, which is, you know, 20, 22, and 24. The column to the very right where you see total allocations, that column looks at that adjusted total and the state class load requirement and identifies how many teachers we're going to need based on those enrollment numbers. So for example, for, you know, 108 general ed students plus A, B, C, and D, you get an adjusted total of 126 for kindergarten, which then requires 6.5 kinder teachers, and so on for each grade. If you go further down to the special content, those numbers are for PE and fine arts, and those are based on the same thing, enrollment, and those numbers are provided by the school improvement officers if we need to change those or adjust those. As we scroll down to special ed, this is where these calculations come into play for A, B, C, and D level, is this column right here that I'm highlighting. So based on the enrollment of special ed students is where we need to, and the same thing, it applies a formula based on A, B, C, and D enrollment and figures how many SE teachers are required. And then on top of that, there is additional SE to support any SE program. This school in particular doesn't have like a cluster program or a small group. So that's why it's not on here. But if there was, you would see, you know, like something under cluster program or a visually impaired program. We would add those allocations as needed. So like Mike said, there's a lot of different people that review these and look at these. And once the numbers are set based on the formulas and the calculations, then there's a discussion as to whether any of these need to be adjusted. for example, if there is a new cluster program at any of the schools, then that's where we would have the discussion about, okay, how do we need to staff those? Where do we add those allocations? The next, so something that let me step back a little bit, that we look at is, you know, how are we staffing from year to year? So for example, if you look at where they were at 120 day, they were at 36 staff members, and now they're at 35. They lost one, but not really. And this is a year that's a little bit different. So each elementary school gained an instructional coach. So that allocation had to be taken away from somewhere. So we took it from 5th grade and moved it down to support staff for an instructional coach. And then we can go through the rest of these if you like. A lot of this other staffing is just based on, it's pretty consistent from school to school. Like I said, in this next line, support staff, you'll see the addition of an instructional coach, which if you look across the sheet was not there in the original allocations. On the approved allocations for 2021 was not there, of course, for 120-day staff because it's a new allocation, but it is in the far right-hand column for 21-22 allocations. This school in particular is a title school, so those numbers would be provided by the Federal Programs Department, and these numbers as of right now are estimated, as we don't have final allocations from that program yet. So as those become available, these numbers will be updated. Educational assistance. This is based on enrollment as well. So once a kindergarten class hits 15 students, they are guaranteed an EA. So we need to look at, you know, how those numbers are changing up above to adjust the educational assistant numbers. Also, each school is given an allocation of 1.5 for an EA, which is a general EA, and that particular position is used for different things. However, throughout the year, there may be adjustments to that, and that allocation may actually have to move to kinder or to SE or to health, which was something we did this year, was the health allocation to help with COVID. And then secretary clerical, again, each school gets an admin assistant, attendants, and a registrar. Custodians, those custodial, that need comes based on what facilities gives us regarding their allocations for custodians. And then security is allocated by the security department. And then you have your grand total on the bottom. So from when we're looking at this from year to year, we're really looking at this number that I just highlighted, which was the approved allocation in 1920, and where they end up for the current school year or the coming school year, 21-22. Middle school is much the same, except can you see it? Let's make it a little bigger. Yeah, I can't even see it. There you go. The difference with middle school is the state class load requirements. So for core classes, non-ELA, those classes cannot, or the size can't be above 160 students. For ELA, it's 135, and then for electives, it's 160. So it works much the same way. We look at the enrollment, the adjusted total based on A, B, C, and D students, and then the number of teachers that would be required based on that formula of, you know, the adjusted total of 298.5 students that would require 5 GE teachers for that particular grade level. And again, what we did for this year for middle school was the same as elementary. We used the enrollment on 329 and added 3% to that. Now, this school in particular, didn't change a whole lot from the projection used. Their enrollment at 890 on 329 was 895, and we're showing an increase of 911. But they did pick up an additional allocation, probably just based on how the class loads worked out. If they went over that threshold of the state class load requirement, then we would need to add a teacher. Same thing for special ed. We look at those enrollment numbers and comes up with this number of 8 special ed teachers. And then there are associated positions that are also under special ed. And those numbers come from the special services department based on need at that particular school site. Intern teachers, this was a new program last year, and we've kept those interns going forward. Each elementary received 2 intern teachers. Middle school will receive 2 intern teacher allocations for 21-22, and high school, the comprehensive high schools, will receive 4. Then each school site, just like the elementaries, does have the support staff that goes along with each school site: counselor, librarian, nurse, and ed tech, ELL, ESL, and then an instructional leader if it's allocated. Oh, this one is for something else, to that particular school. Educational assistants, again, the same thing. It's based on the particular need of the class size. So once these classes go over that state minimum, then the assistants, the EAs, are adjusted for that need. At the middle school and high school level, security allocations or security positions are allocated to the school, and that's why it appears on this sheet, unlike the elementary. High school level, then same process, looking at what the approved allocation was, what the enrollment was on 329, and adding 3% to that, which can make a significant difference at a school that large when you're adding a 3% enrollment. So they actually ended up with more allocations than where they were for 2021, just based on that increase. Same thing for special education. We saw an increase in their enrollment in A, B, C, and D level students, which resulted in an increase in their SE teachers. As I mentioned, the 4 intern teachers will go to the high school, or allocations for the high school. And then the big difference in the administration for the high schools is with the number of assistant principals. Support staff is the same, at least in terms of the positions. It's just a bigger number based on the size of the school site. And then in addition, at the high school level, they are allocated an athletic coordinator and an athletic trainer. And then again, EAs are allocated based on the enrollment need and the class size for that particular site. And then there is a greater need at the high school level on the administrative side for attendants, academy secretaries, bookkeepers, registrar, and special services. And then facilities allocations, again, are allocated based on the need and the numbers that are provided to us by the facilities department. And then security allocations are here rather than, they reside at the school as an allocation rather than with the security department. I know that was a lot, and probably can go back to some of those if we need to. But if there's any questions or you want me to go over something a little bit more.
We'll stand for questions now.
Okay.
Dr. Cleveland, this is board member Noreen Scott, and I wondered if today's announcement by Intel of their $3.5 billion expansion was discussed. It's my understanding most of it is for retooling equipment, but has anybody visited with you to give you any sense of how many new employees might be added? And will they be bringing families?
Can you repeat the question?
I think it was for Dr. Cleveland.
It's really for Dr. Cleveland. It's a more global question. The question is that a fairly substantial investment has been announced at Intel. It's my understanding that it's predominantly equipment, but I wondered if anybody from the county or from anybody has let us know if there'll be additional students.
I think Dr. Cleveland might have left the meeting. Is Mike Baker, have you heard anything?
Yes, I'd be happy to answer that question. Madam Chair, members of the board, or the committee, I should say. So yes, we are familiar with the Intel announcement. We're also in communications with the city of Rio Rancho, and we do track building permits pretty closely. I don't know if, to be honest with you, if Rio Rancho is really going to be able to build more than they're building now. It will be interesting to see, but we are anticipating some growth in that particular area for sure. But not all growth comes to public schools. So typically in the past, you would have a house. Each house would average about 2.7 in population. That would mean approximately a 0.7 to the district. However, what's happening now is those children are also being educated by charter schools and by private schools, and we really don't know what the breakdown of those numbers are. We know that the new 2020 census will give us additional information, and we'll be able to analyze that hopefully in the next few months. So although we can expect an impact, don't know really what that impact is going to be.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. I just was trying to get a sense of any community discussion on that.
I would like that. I'm sorry, I could hear Noreen's questions, but I couldn't respond to her. No one has spoken to us. Usually they do, and usually the time that we get the most involved with that is once people began to actually start looking at Rio Rancho, and we begin to meet with potential employees from Intel and share the programs and information about our schools. And Albuquerque is generally invited to that as well. Both economic developments are there, Albuquerque and Rio Rancho. But you know, historically, Intel, as they have increased numbers of employees, they tend to have children, given the age of the average employee in Intel. And so we anticipate that some of those will come. But as Mr. Baker said, you don't know how many will choose to live in Albuquerque versus Rio Rancho. I mean, it's just something that we really don't know. That being said, that's good information to have. One of the things that when we start growing again, I hope we'll go back and do what we did before. We worked with Pulte, all of the major builders, and as they sold homes, we asked them for information about their children. what ages were their children, and were they likely to access a public education, or would they be looking for something else? And so those numbers used to help us every year in projecting our enrollment. We just haven't been growing that much in the last couple of years. So when we start seeing that growth pick up with the major builders, we will ask the builders and also our real estate folks to help us with getting that information again. But we did that with the two really big builders, D.H. Horton, D.R. Horton, and Pulte. So I'm sorry, I just could not get back on. I've had some problems with my machine today. I've been on a national conference, and ever since I've logged into that, I've had some problems. So I could hear you, but I couldn't respond without going through the whole thing all over again.
And to the Secretary Scott's point, I was just looking it up. It looks like it's supposed to create 700 new jobs in the next 3 years. And I think that intel, if I'm correct, and you probably know a bit about this, Secretary Scott, is that there's such a percentage that's supposed to live in Rio Rancho, and I don't know if that's still the case. Otherwise, they pay back the city.
That's correct. There's a percentage of requirement for hiring, but that was under their IRBs. And that's basically what I'm asking is if there's going to be an additional IRB, and if so, they would have to come to the school district with data. And it sounds like nobody's been talking about that at this point.
The last big hire, Beth and I went to speak on behalf of the district, and it's always a great experience talking to the folks who are considering our area. And they asked really good questions. It was very interesting. They also had as their guides folks who lived in Rio Rancho and could speak to those issues. And I will have to tell you, those that had children in our district spoke very highly of our district. And I think that was a factor in many of them deciding to stay and move into Rio Rancho. The other thing, though, is not anything related to us, but I thought was interesting. In all the years that we have done this, many of the questions related to adverse weather conditions. And many had been through hurricanes and other really bad situations. Yeah. And that had never been a topic of conversation, but that was one of the areas where we could say, we have no hurricanes, we have no tornadoes, we don't have earthquakes generally. And, this is relatively a very safe place. But I thought it was very interesting that was the topic of conversation, because in all the years, that's never been the case in other groups that we have spoken to in the past.
In the past, those meetings and those projections were put together by the Economic Development Organization. And I know Mr. Baker sits on the board, but it doesn't sound like he had gotten any information on it. Is that correct, Mike?
Yeah, that's correct. I think. 1 minute. Yeah. Sorry about that feedback. Yeah, so that the information I know was made public today, but no, I have not received any specific information in that regard.
Actually, the information was made public last night on 60 Minutes, which I about jumped out of my chair when New Mexico was mentioned. So it was pretty exciting. So they kind of preempted the governor.
Did you have any other questions, Secretary Scott? No. I'm sorry, Dr. Cleveland, did you want to add something?
Yeah, the one thing I would add is, based on what was said earlier, I just want to assure the board we're doing a whole lot more than hoping people will come back. And so we're planning a pretty strong campaign this summer to talk about the good things, that some of those additions that are in the budget are things that we heard directly from parents that was a factor for them in wanting to return to the district. And so we listened, and the surveys, I know that Beth shared this with you before, but we surveyed everyone who left the district. And we asked them, why did you leave? What will it take for you to come back? What are the interests that you have for your children, your family? And some of those things are very definitely reflected in this budget. So, and then the summer, as I said, we're going to put a real push on return to school. I have been at a national conference, and It's very interesting today. Every single district that was there is having exactly the same issues, exactly the same problem with it, and almost exactly the same percentage of population that has left. But you look at the complexity of some of the districts, and it's just amazing. Orange County, Florida, said they had put in 35,000 hotspots and would not be putting in any towers because the community around Orlando believes the towers have adverse health conditions and therefore will not allow them to be placed in their communities. So 35,000 hotspots is just almost beyond my comprehension of how you would pull that off. But all of the discussions are pretty much proportionally the same. Whether you are a district, like one of the other districts is Natomas, California, which is about our size, almost identical challenges. So we're all in this together, in terms of trying to get our students back and keeping our students connected and figuring how to balance the virtual and the in-person next year.
Vice President Morgan, did you have any questions or comments?
Nothing at all. Thank you. Appreciate all the information.
President Galbraith?
I don't, but thank you, Marisa, for going over everything. I appreciate it because I'm still learning, so it's very helpful as we went over all those things. So thank you.
You're welcome.
And Board Member Coleman?
I don't. Thank you. And thank you for the information.
Okay, did anybody else, or Dr. Cleveland, I saw you were unmuted, so I wasn't sure.
Oh, no, thanks everybody for presenting. I just wanted to thank everybody.
Yes, thank you. It was pretty good detail. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to Mike Baker in reference to the CARES budget review.
Yes, Madam Chair, as member of the Finance Committee. So we do have all of these items, by the way, are in your budget folder. I just wanted to remind you all of that. So the next item will be the CARES budget review. So one of the things that has, I'm sorry, we have a question?
I got a question. You say it was in our folder. Are you talking board book folder? Is that what you're referring to? Because
I believe some of the information was in the board book, but specifically in your budget folder that Tracy sent you. It's in the budget binder on Google.
And I was going to ask about that because I did try to access it, and under the CARES folder, and I'm assuming that's probably where it was, it says that I couldn't get access.
Okay, we'll go ahead and double check to see why that is the case.
Yeah, it says the proposed ESSER to budget, and then it has it locked.
Okay, so yeah, Tracy will go ahead and.
There's a couple of folders like that are locked that says you have to request or gain access. Thanks.
I'd like to thank Board Member Morgan for asking because I thought I was just totally inept. So I'm glad more than one of us had that problem.
Oh yeah, so she sends it to you in the Google Drive, the whole budget, so that you can look at each of the departments and the 910B5. It's all listed there. And what I do is when I go into it, I star it so you can go right into your drive and go do your starred. So hopefully you got that and you might be able to search that, Secretary Scott.
Thank you. I was able to access most of it. In fact, everything that's been presented so far, but I couldn't get this.
Okay.
Always know if you need any assistance, you call us. We will be glad to help with that. So please just know if you need that help, let us know.
You'll be my hotline.
Okay, so moving into the CARES budget, the first item that is budgeted, and by the way, there will be changes to this one of the things with CARES that has really helped us, earlier I said that we had many budget challenges, really largely that began with COVID. And one of the things that helps us kind of get out of this situation is the CARES budget. So the first item, funding has been set aside for $100,000 for our special population. That funding will be used for supplemental education opportunities for that particular population. The next item is our asset line item, approximately $941,000. We will also leverage approximately $150,000 from our CARES 1 budget. That will be used to fund the new camera system for all the school buses. The next item, which is the bigger item, again, fixed assets. That has to do with the ionizer and refurbishing our HVAC systems throughout the entire district. And the purpose of that is whether it be COVID, whether it be allergy or some other type of virus, that the air that is being put into the schools, that air is as clean as it possibly could be. And again, that is one of the appropriate uses of the CARES funding. The next item, $80,000 is used for salary expenses for special services for recovery coordinator. The next item is $566,000, and those are for a number of contractors, social workers, SLPs, diagnosticians, psychologists, and other type of services that will facilitate the recovery needs of those students that were affected educationally due to COVID. Indirect costs of $326,000 is also budgeted. The one item that will be reduced is the HVAC systems. We will be reducing that by approximately $1.9 million in order to add and to pay for the addition of the virtual schools and also to pay for 2 counselors. So that $5.5 million will be reduced to approximately $3.6 million. And that is the CARES funding as it stands now. If we're going to change the budget, we will come back on May 10th and possibly go over the additional changes to CARES. That concludes my CARES presentation, but I stand for questions on CARES.
Mr. Baker, this is Noreen Scott. I have a question. How does the CARES money affect the bond money that we got for the AC? And is there are they working together? Is it augmenting it? How did that affect that?
Yeah, so that they essentially act independently. So the bond money had to do with complete replacement of HVAC systems at 6 elementary schools and Rio Rancho Middle School. The CARES funding will augment the HVAC systems in the other schools.
Vice President Morgan, do you have any questions?
I do. Before I have a question, I want to commend Mike Baker on the pronunciation of that word, diagnostician. Mike, that was pretty good, man. That was real good.
I felt I kind of slipped it up a bit.
Well, you know what? I thought you was going to stumble over that a little bit, but you did a very good job with that, man. Hey, my question is, what's the indirect cost? You got a percent down there, but what is that?
So the district is awarded administrative fees, so that that particular amount of money actually goes back into the operations of the district in order to offset the cost of administrating. for the administration of the grant.
Okay. Just curious. You had a description for all the other ones. I just didn't see one for that one. That was all. Cool. Thank you.
Board Member Coleman.
I don't. Thank you, though.
Thank you. President Galbraith.
I'm good. Thank you.
Secretary Scott, did you have any additional questions? And Dr. Cleveland?
No, I don't.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mike. Then go back to the, I guess, department budgets.
Yes, Madam Chair, Dr. Cleveland, members of the committee. So I think as we wind down this evening, there was a question, Madam Chair. I believe you brought up the question with the committee in regard to inside legal counsel versus outside legal fees. And so hopefully you received additional information in your budget folder. It should be listed under departments, under the legal department, and then there's a Word document that's in there. And Arlene will be bringing up that particular information. And so we'll give her a few minutes on that. Yeah. So as Arlene is bringing that document up, on January 15th, 2019, the district hired its first attorney and created the legal department within Rio Rancho Public Schools. Previous to that time, all the legal work was conducted from outside legal counsel. And it's all right, we're still having some always difficulty with this computer stuff, right? Bringing up documents. Just takes us a little time, but we typically will get to that point. Oh, there we go. Yeah, it's there. So a couple of things that I want to bring up. One is the actual financial analysis, what we've spent on legal fees compared to what we've spent on our inside legal counsel. And then I want to conclude with another factor. So as you see in the 17-18 fiscal year, our legal fees were over $439,000. At that time, we did not have legal counsel. In the 18-19 fiscal year, legal fees did go down to $336,000. However, our inside legal fee cost was approximately $81,000. But overall, you see that the funds that we spent on legal counsel or legal fees actually dropped a little bit from $439 to $417. Then in 1920, our legal fees were $151. Our inside legal counsel fees were $183 for a total of $335. Again, you will see a pretty good drop there from $417 to $335. Then in 2021, currently, we stand at legal fees at just over $20,000. Our inside legal counsel costs have been $253 for a total of $273. So once again, you see that our total spent on outside and inside legal fees have decreased. Now, I just want to point out that the positions in the 2021 year not only include our legal counsel, but also include a paralegal and our executive assistant as well. We have been essentially beefing up this department And one of the things that is likely to occur in the future with the pass of the amendment to the Civil Rights Act in the state of New Mexico, the governor and the state legislature believe that it was necessary in order to make essentially suing governmental entities, to include school districts, easier. They've done away with qualified immunity, and there's also awards to attorneys, thereby making it much more lucrative for attorneys to sue and easier to sue governments, to include our district. So we do anticipate likely that lawsuits against the district will probably increase, and hopefully we will be in better position to be able to fend those lawsuits over.
So I have a question in reference to that, particularly that, because you're thinking that there's going to be some increase of lawsuits. However, the board is sued in those lawsuits, correct? Because we're sued and we can sue. So when there's a lawsuit done, it's against the school board, correct? And so Lauren actually works for the school district, and typically that would end up going out. And I would assume, is our insurance going to be covering any those lawsuits that come from the civil?
Let me just correct one thing. The board is sued, but often the superintendent is sued. And then the principal is sued and the teacher can be sued.
Right.
So it's not limited to the board only. So I know you're aware of that, but I know the whole board is aware of the fact that it's not always the board alone. It's often both administration and the board.
Correct. But that's why we have an attorneys that represent the board, because as you know, like Walsh and Gallegos represents the board. And so anyway, so with those lawsuits, would that go to the insurance company?
Most of those lawsuits do go to the insurance company, and the insurance company does provide the funding for those type of lawsuits.
Okay.
And in addition, they often assign other attorneys.
Right, correct.
In most
Yeah.
cases, it may or may not be our attorney. It's who they decide that they want to give the case to. So sometimes they've awarded to our attorney, the board's attorney. Sometimes they have just chosen another attorney. And often when they do that, they think that attorney has some special background or expertise in that particular type of case. So it's not always our choice who will represent us.
Correct. Yes. And that is the case. Yes, the insurance gets to choose. I'm sorry, Mr. Baker. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I saw Lauren that was trying to come on. I think Lauren can add to the conversation as well.
Madam Chair, it's not clear at this point whether our insurance company will cover those claims. I'm virtually certain that they will, but I haven't seen it in a certificate of coverage yet. They did comment during the legislative process. It sounded like they were anticipating covering those claims, but I haven't seen that in writing.
Okay, because that's concerning if they don't, obviously, because we can see that rise. Okay, and I'm sorry, and Mr. Baker, I had interrupted you, so go ahead.
No problem. So just kind of lastly, kind of wrapping up, this financial analysis, I just want to mention that having inside counsel, you can see that the numbers really have saved the district quite a bit of money over the last few years. But there's also something that we really don't attach money to, and that is just the convenience of being able to walk down the hall and ask a legal question and get an immediate response. In the past, we would have to contact legal counsel. It would be usually some time before we would get a response. Now, Lauren is just down the hall, so it is much more convenient, and certainly we get those answers generally much quicker. To add to that, finally, there are some of the duties that we do are fairly complex, and by having inside counsel, it helps us make a decision on whether we're going to move forward with a project or not. To give you an example, the Mountain View Middle School land sale was highly complex. We probably would have never tackled that project had it not been for in-house legal counsel. So although, I certainly didn't put a number on that, how much Lauren really saved us in legal fees on that. But he, really shepherded that project really since about the time he got here, and really brought it to a successful conclusion. And it's those projects that we probably would have never tackled in the past that we can tackle now. So in regard to inside legal counsel, I think certainly that has really paid off for the district. So,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead. Questions?
Sorry. So yeah, so because several board members before they actually came on the board, they had addressed concerns with the cost of legal counsel. So I'm assuming that somebody had talked to some of them about that before they came on. So some of these fees were due to a large lawsuit that we had, correct? I mean, so when that was just up to last year, about January of 2020, that cost us $235,432. And then also I was going through the numbers that they had sent previously in 2019. I mean, land acquisition, I'm assuming, is a big part of that number as well, correct? Some of these numbers, because we had, or is that not part of this? Because we had a document that I have from 2018 to 2019 was $243,899 for land acquisitions.
Yes.
Okay, so that's what I'm just trying to get the feel for is some of these numbers. Yeah, they were high, but we were going through land acquisitions for properties for our schools, correct? And then a huge lawsuit as well. I'm saying Lauren's great that we have him, but I just want to make sure that it's very transparent that there were some large expenses in these attorney fees as well.
Oh, definitely. I mean, those type of, those big lawsuits, fluctuate year after year. And the legal work that is done obviously fluctuates from year to year.
Right. So would Lauren be taking on land acquisitions if we end up having to acquire more land?
I'm going to have Lauren answer that question.
Because that was a significant expense over the last couple of years.
Madam Chair, the last piece of property that the district acquired, I did the legal work for, the Student Services Center.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if we have on the horizon doing any condemnations. And I guess it depends on the breadth and complexity of that, whether that's something I could take on in my shop. It's more than just filing documents. But I'm certainly willing to approach that.
And such as the lawsuit that we had that we paid out quite a sum for, are you able to represent the board in reference to those lawsuits?
I am able to represent the district and the board. There's a little bit different situation at this point because those lawsuits are now covered by an insurance company.
Correct.
And we would do our very best to tender to our insurance company for coverage on defense and for any ultimate verdict. But certainly it's hard to know what's going to come down the pipe. I do anticipate over the next few years, and I think it's started already, that we're going to see a lot more litigation.
That's what I was going to ask, if you could do litigation work.
Yeah. But we're developing the ability to do that in-house.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Board Member Coleman, did you have any questions?
I do. Thank you. And Lauren has been an incredible resource. And what I appreciate is the objectivity that I've observed. That being said, I know that there are going to be circumstances where we as a board need to kind of separate between administration and the board. And I'm just curious how we're going to handle legal representation. And is that in the budget and prepared for when that time comes? And are we in a position where do we have that in place?
Yes, we do. I can respond to that and then Mike can. Yes, we do. And one of the things that has really been helpful with having Lauren in the district is things come in. Maybe this isn't the best analogy, but it's kind of the traffic cop for things. And so there are times he looks at a situation and says, this is better for Walsh to take this. Their expertise is stronger in this area. Or he'll say, this one in particular, we need to go back and let the Cuddy firm finish it out because they did 90% of the work. They have all the records. They have all of that. Maybe need to finish out that little tiny bit of acquisition that still needed to be done. And so that ability to look at each case and say, where is it best to go? And as everyone has noted, previously, most cases it goes to insurance anyway, and they're making most of the decisions. But there certainly is adequate funding if, and I can give you one example of when you do have separate, when there's a personnel hearing, the administration is on one side presenting the case, and the board is on the other side hearing the case. And so the person who administers that hearing is the board's attorney. So there have been times, it's interesting, Walsh has told us of many times where they've gone to the board and asked if they could sit on the other side of the table with the administration and to get another attorney for the board, because they thought it was so important to the board that case be heard by the attorney who knew the very most about it, that was the most knowledgeable about it. So there's always that ability there to work with that, but ultimately that comes down to the board feeling comfortable with those kinds of arrangements. But he has been very helpful in helping us determine where things best go. For example, we were able to pull one thing out that we didn't have to go to court on the NMAA issue, but you really would have needed an attorney really well-versed in sports law. It's a very unique area, small area. And it would have been better to have had, if we had to go there, someone who had that knowledge and expertise. And he's very good at telling us, this is better to go here, as opposed for me to do that. But I want to echo what Mr. Baker has said. It's been wonderful to have him close, to have that information to you very quickly. And he's been a tremendous resource for us, and tries so very hard to hear all the facts, keep us from jumping off the ledge when we're pretty excited about something, and getting us to look at it very objectively. So I do appreciate his work. And then my last comment is to the board's point. Yes, every year is different, and you might have a year or two from now where you might have it increases go way up because we do have a major lawsuit, and especially if that lawsuit was not covered by insurance. But anyway, I hope that's just a little bit of insight, in terms of yes, there are different roles at times, and yes, we do have the resources and an understanding that we might have to do that.
And I was just going to say, yeah, because student hearings and personnel hearings are the ones that I had kind of written down here. And I will just say that Lauren is so quick to respond when I have some questions. He's been just a tremendous asset for just a simple question that I had just to double check something. And it's really nice to have him in-house to be able to do that. Did you have any more questions, Board Member Coleman?
No, that's all. Thank you.
President Galbraith?
Yeah, I just want to say, it's been so helpful to me as a board president to have in-house legal counsel. There's been a couple of times where I have to go and I love Walsh Gallegos. I think they're great. But when I do talk to them, I'm like, wait, don't charge me yet, and I'm so grateful that I can just go to Lauren Hatch, who's been so great. And I think a good example is, the research that he did for us on House Bill 4. And that was a question that came from the board, and that he was able to put together such a great, just a great report for us to kind of understand those things better. And so anyway, I just wanted to put that out there, how grateful I've been that I can kind of ask him questions on policy and different things like that. And where, either I just wouldn't get the answers, I think, or, it would take a little bit, or I'd have to get charged for things that I would rather not be charging the district for those things. So it's been so helpful to me.
Vice President Morgan?
Nope, I'm all good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Secretary Scott?
I think our district is large enough that we need in-house legal counsel. And I have been very impressed with Lauren's rapid response to any questions I've had. So I think it's money well spent.
Thank you. You can all tell where I can see you on the screens because I moved my head. So sorry. Mike, are we expecting if they're they're looking at going into litigation, is that budget going to grow? Because it's gone up a bit from the time we had Lauren, and then now they have a paralegal now. I think that she came on this year. I'm sorry, I don't even see other faces, so I'm feel like I'm talking to a blank screen. Sorry.
Yes, fairly recently.
Okay, and then they have a legal executive assistant now. Is that new as well?
Yeah, that's a fairly new position.
Okay, so we had 2 new positions added into that department this year.
Yes.
So with that, are you thinking that it's going to expand even more if they get to the point to where they look at doing litigation?
Well, I think the next natural move would be another pretty significant cost has to do with special services. So I think the next natural progression would be to provide legal services for the special services department.
Okay. And would they be into a whole different, they would be over in that department, so then they would have 3, like an attorney and a paralegal as well?
Same department, yes.
So you're saying same department in special services? Or under legal?
I'm sorry, it would be under legal.
Okay, great. Okay, was there any other questions in reference to that? Okay, all right. Go ahead, Mike, I'm sorry.
That's okay. So, Madam Chair, just let me kind of wrap things up right now. I hope this evening that what you've heard is a number of budget challenges that we're facing for this upcoming school year. Hopefully, you've seen the detail that is spent on the revenue and the SEG that Arlene reviewed. Hopefully, you also saw the painstaking detail in regard to allocating teachers and support staff across the district and how much care is put into that. And also trying to project, nobody knows what the future is. And especially this year because of COVID makes things a little bit difficult. But taking everything into consideration, typically year after year, I believe, do a pretty good job in our projections and certainly provide for the resources for our programs. And of course, it seems like it's never enough money. It's never enough money, but year after year, we seem to receive our funding, to convert that funding into human resources and to provide the products to our students. So at this point, I think I would like to, not just myself, but also the staff here today, we stand for questions, and I certainly at this time would also want to thank them for a job well done and just day after day coming in. And I can't tell you how many times we changed the budget because of all these things being thrown at us from PED and also the projections just changing wildly. So we stand for questions.
Vice President Morgan?
No, Mike, you've answered mine, and you guys have done a very good job with the information that was presented today. Thank you. I have no questions.
President Galbraith?
I have no further questions. Thank you guys so much.
And I see Secretary Scott came on, so go ahead.
No questions.
Oh, okay, thank you. Board Member Coleman?
I don't, but thank you for putting together the reports, everybody that is involved, the people that gave the presentations, and Catherine for putting the meeting together. So thank you.
Mr. Baker, I do have a couple questions. When I was going through some of the revenue, we had the bus advertising revenue. Have we ever figured that out how to access that bus advertising?
There was a lot of discussion, Mike, about advertising on school buses. There was some about advertising on other school sites. And so I wanted to let you know you're muted.
Yeah, because we weren't able to access that, if I recall, because there was an issue with it a few years back.
There was, but they worked through some of that. And I do know some districts are now using their buses, as I have seen it in a couple of districts. So, but it didn't turn out to be very profitable, actually, as I recall. But Mike, you probably remember a whole lot more about it than I do.
The only thing I could recall really is there's some controversy in regard to that, and in regard, we really don't, for the most part, use our buses for advertisement purposes.
Right. No, I was thinking back a few years back, and this is going back, so my memory is not that great. I thought that we couldn't access the money that we were collecting on those advertising.
Yes,
For some reason.
percentage of it goes back to the state, went back to the state. And that was what made it not very usable, is that the state took most of the revenue off of your school buses and claimed it for themselves.
Right. And then we weren't getting the money back. Wasn't that the case for a while?
We didn't.
And so, right. So are we now getting some of it back?
I believe it's very, very small. Arlene is looking up the number now.
Yeah, because on the revenue sheet, it showed bus advertising like $1,800. Again, it's not much, but I knew that we had an issue with that revenue a while back, that we couldn't even access it for some reason.
Yeah, I think the state probably claims that they're state-owned buses. They provide the funding for those buses, but we can kind of do some research and get back with you on that.
Yeah, again, that's going back to years. Yeah, that was something going back a lot of years. And also, because we're looking at those additional expenses, and then we did a 6% budget cut across the departments. Are we going to see more cuts due to the additional expenses with the virtual and the student support, and looks like fine arts? And then just to add on to that, because we are not going to be charging for the summer school. And it looks like on the summer school, if I might be incorrect, the revenue on that used to be about 13,000.
Yeah, that's correct.
If I'm looking at my revenue sheet.
Yes,
so we're going to be we're not going to be collecting that this summer.
Yes, that is correct. We will not be collecting that summer school revenue this year. And yes, you are correct in regard to balancing the budget. The departments will be cut an additional 6%.
Another 6%. Well, they were cut 6% to balance the budget.
Yes.
And then last year. But so is it just 6% now, or is it going to be an additional amount with these additional items that we just came up with?
Yes, it will be a total of 12%.
Wow. So
unless we grow, unless we get our students back. And so that's what's the real push, is if we get our students back that we've lost, the 900, then we get a good portion of those students back, our revenue will increase, and it will increase significantly. You know, as it was said earlier, we're hoping to have them back. As I said, we're doing much more than hope. But one of the indicators of that is the survey that Beth Pendergrass sent out to all of those families. And she's had many responses, positive responses, that their intent is to come back in the fall. So we'll continue to monitor those numbers. And if we can get our students back, then you won't have to do that second at all. And so I was not aware that it was down to 12%. So I think that's an interesting number.
That's a lot. 12% is a huge number. If you actually look at the department budgets and see how much they've already been cutting, that just That kills me. I mean, I know we have to balance the budget, and Mike, I'm so appreciative how we do the budget now, and it's very transparent for all of us, but that does kill me just to see that, because we see that we keep cutting back these departments and it hurts the programs that we're giving our students. So we're taking away from things in the classroom that, or activities, we've seen over the years, athletics being cut. And, we just got money back into the fine arts program to be able to do some traveling and all that. So that's concerning that we're at 12%.
Yeah, there's two things I want to add to that. The first thing, as Dr. Cleveland stated, is that on the revenue side, what we did was we estimated that the student population would grow 1%. So we only received 50% of that 1% in regard to SEG funding. And so we were very, very conservative in that regard. But on the student projection side, we projected a growth of approximately 3%. That could go up as much as 5%. And so if we do have those numbers, and if those numbers come out that strong, then we will be able to capture the revenue 100% at either 3 to 5%. If we get that money will be funneled back into departments or new programs, and that is up to, of course, Dr. Cleveland and the school board, how we take that additional funding. Secondly, and we'll point this out also on May 10th, you'll see that we have our cash carry number. And what that number is that number is funding that is not used by departments. And right now we're estimating that to be approximately $15 million. So departments typically don't use all of their budget in order to provide the programs that they use. And what happens is that money rolls over into next fiscal year. So I understand your concern, and it certainly is a concern, but I don't think the impact is, that significant. The problem that we face, like I said, is we have approximately $5.8 million in additional expenditures without any new revenue. And so, as you know, we are required by law to balance the budget. And there's only so much that we could do. So unfortunately, that's what we had to do. But hopefully in the future, we'll be able to restore it. And hopefully we'll know what our new numbers will be. We'll have a good indication after the 40-day count. And then in January, if those numbers look good, we'll actually get the revenue, the new revenue in January.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. We had that before, where you have to wait a year to get your revenue. Isn't it usually like almost a year, because you use your previous year's numbers? So are they going to be working with us more this year, the money faster, if we see our spike in population?
It's my understanding, when you have growth over 1%, that you will see those revenue numbers that particular fiscal year.
Okay.
In January.
In January, okay.
Yeah. But the other thing that does happen is typically the state holds back money, and they're making adjustments to all the districts throughout the state. So what happens in January is the final unit value is actually issued. Sometimes that unit value goes up, and sometimes that unit value goes down. So what could happen is that our MEM will go up, but sometimes that unit value will come down. So we don't know what really the state is holding back, or if they have to actually decrease the unit value. But if we do see a population increase of 3 to 5%, we will likely see a corresponding increase in revenue.
We've been told they are holding more back this year than they have most years. So they are holding a significant amount back because of the uncertainty. So that's what superintendents have been told, is that they are being very careful with the unit value, being very cautious because of not knowing. The other factor, of course, is the state's economy. And the state's economy is slowly beginning to pick up. The last comment I would add is that we are up from the 120 day. So typically we go down from the mid-year on all the way to the end of the year. We actually have already seen a turnaround, I believe, of about 100 and some students. So would want you to know that we've already seen some turnaround even now.
Board Member Coleman, I saw your hand raised.
Yes, I'm just curious, unless there's someplace else that I am not aware of. When I go into the Google Drive, looking at, because I will take time and look at the budget preparation report. I haven't seen things loaded in there for sometimes over a year, unless I'm missing something. And so at what point can we expect that the new budget preparation reports will be on the drive?
Yeah, Member Coleman, I think specifically, if you can identify specifically what those documents are. I know many of the documents have been on the drive for quite some time. Certainly not all of those documents. If you can come in, maybe we can sit down with you and go over that to identify which documents.
It's in the department.
Okay. Yeah, most of the departments, those documents have been in there for quite some time.
And that's really kind of what I go to and look at and form my questions on. And I know that there are some that, I'm looking at even like March of 20 that just haven't been updated. And so I guess I'm just kind of asking when we can expect to see those things available to us.
Yeah, those departments, we're going to be double checking, but those were there for quite some time. I know some of the documents, for example, allocations, which were just recently completed, those were recently uploaded onto your drive, but the departments have been there for quite some time.
Is that something that can we expect? Will it at some point? Will we see those updated or?
Yeah, I think the best course of action really is to come in and let's go over those again, to make sure that, we just want to make sure that we'll have Tracy's saying she'll call you to kind of review that, to make sure that that maybe you're accessing the correct folder and file on that, because those have been there for quite some time.
The updated ones.
Yes, the updated ones.
Okay, Catherine, you look like you're uncertain. Is there?
No, I'm trying to figure out what you're asking because I'm in the folders of departments. What are you looking for?
And it's just so it might be that what I have saved is not, what I have starred is not the right thing. So have her call me.
Yes, yeah, she'll call you and we'll identify what the issue is with your drive.
Thank you.
And President Galbraith?
Yes. Yeah. I was just looking at it when I see, at least in the one I was looking at, I see stuff that was updated from last month. So I don't know. But okay, I have one question. With all these students that we've lost, like what are we doing to get them enrolled now? So we're not kind of having 900 students who are registering at one time in the summer. Dr. Cleveland, are we doing some things right now to kind of get an idea of who's coming in? I know you said they sent out a survey, but are we able to actually get them registered, just like we're doing registration right now for the students who are currently enrolled?
We are reaching out to them to register now. So we're really encouraging people to let us know. And I think most folks will. They realize if they wait till the summer, take, for example, the high school level, Some of the courses that they really hope to have might not be available when they want them to be available. So we're encouraging people to come back and start registering now. And those that were in our system, it's no problem for us to make that current and be able to pick it up. But you make a really good point. They need to register now. They need to get back so that we know they're coming back. One of the challenges in all of this is that when we cut back and we're careful with allocations, which we've had to be, we're not going to hire everybody we need to hire. And then when they show up, we're going to have need for more teachers. And it's going to be very hard then to find those teachers. And the best ones will have already been hired somewhere else. So that's the challenge that you have, waiting and having to be too tight. But as you can see, we had to do with what, we had to do with the information we have right now. And that's a really difficult thing. One of the things that helps us a little bit, though, are our teacher interns. And they help us, they've helped us this year, and we hope they will be helpful next year. We will be continuing the teacher intern program, that collaborative program with the union. And they have also helped us out a lot with our substitutes and with teachers on leave and other things. So, but we do need to get them registered, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. You're muted, Catherine. Has happened once.
Do I need $1 or something like that? What, start contributing to Dr. Cleveland's jar? I just need to do what Secretary Scott was when she talks. It came on last week. So did anybody else, did you guys have any other questions? I'll just look at your faces. Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Baker. I mean, it's so much information. I'm very sad, of course. And anytime I look at these, when I see reductions in the department budgets, I mean, and people don't realize in the community how much does go to the staff and for the salaries and benefits. And so we just have very little to spend for programs in each of the departments. So you guys do a great job. And I know all the directors do a fantastic job of trying to get those figures down to be able to balance it. But it does make me sad to see this over the last 2 years of having to keep cutting. Especially when you see like, oh, we're trying to fund more, like when we did the fine arts, try to get that up, that funding, and then we come back and say, oh, got to give it some back. But you guys do a great job, and all of them do a wonderful job. So I really appreciate it. Did you have anything else for us?
I do not.
Dr. Cleveland? No. Okay. All right. Well, thank you. If nobody else has anything, we'll go ahead and adjourn this meeting. Oh, well, unless you guys want me to tell you the Finance Committee is on May 10th at 4:30 p.m. Sorry, I forgot to do my advanced planning goal.
You just told us we're good.
I know, we went over it. We've gone over it. It's all good.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it. See you all later. Bye-bye.
Thank you.